Everything invisible has meaning, spiritual wisdom, to understand the universe. From the earliest moments of human consciousness, people have looked at the night sky, at the whisper of the wind through the trees, or at the silence between words, and have felt that there was more present than what the eyes could perceive. The universe is not simply a collection of material objects colliding in space. It is also a vast field of unseen forces, subtle energies, and spiritual patterns that shape everything we know. To live only in what is visible is to walk half-blind, unable to grasp the profound interconnectedness that sustains all life. Everything invisible has meaning, and the wisdom of the ages teaches us that understanding this invisible fabric is the key to comprehending the universe itself. Philosophers, mystics, and sages have always insisted that the visible world is but a reflection of deeper truths. Plato spoke of shadows on the wall of the cave, pointing us toward the reality beyond appearances. Buddhist teachers remind us that the mind, though invisible, shapes our entire experience of reality. Mystics from diverse traditions speak of vibrations, auras, divine will, destiny, and spiritual dimensions that cannot be measured with scientific instruments, but are felt in the depths of the soul. This text is an invitation to go beyond the surface, to explore the invisible meanings that sustain our existence, and to realize that what we cannot see often matters more than what is before our eyes. The following 5 explorations will open windows into spiritual wisdom, showing how the unseen layers of life shape our destiny, our growth, and our purpose. The invisible forces that shape reality. When we consider our lives, it is tempting to think of them only in terms of visible events: birth, growth, relationships, success, failure, and death. Yet behind each of these experiences lies a network of invisible forces that silently determine outcomes. Gravity, for example, is unseen but undeniable. We do not question its existence, even though we cannot touch it. In the same way, spiritual forces such as intention, prayer, thought, and energy are unseen yet deeply influential. The human mind itself demonstrates this principle. Our thoughts, which no one can see, construct entire worlds. A single idea, invisible to the naked eye, can transform civilizations. The inventions that changed humanity, the wheel, writing, electricity, began as silent sparks in the mind. These sparks are proof that the invisible has meaning, that reality is shaped first in the unseen realm before it manifests in the physical. Religions across the world echo this truth. In Christianity, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In Buddhism, karma is invisible yet inescapable, linking every action to unseen consequences. In Sufism, the breath of God animates creation though it cannot be seen. These traditions agree. The invisible determines the visible, just as the root determines the fruit. We can see this in daily life. Love, for instance, is invisible. You cannot hold it in your hand or capture it under a microscope, yet its presence changes everything. Families are built, nations are reconciled, wars are ended, and lives are saved because of it. The same can be said of hatred or fear. These emotions are unseen currents that can topple empires or destroy relationships. What is invisible is never meaningless. It is, in fact, the most meaningful. Moreover, science itself supports this spiritual intuition. Modern physics shows us that the visible world is made up of atoms, and atoms themselves are composed of subatomic particles, waves, and energy fields invisible to the eye. The reality we touch is, in fact, a dance of forces beyond direct perception. Quantum mechanics goes further, revealing that observation itself changes outcomes, suggesting that consciousness, the most invisible aspect of ourselves, plays a role in shaping the universe. To live with awareness of invisible forces is to live more consciously. It is to recognize that every thought we cultivate, every emotion we nurture, and every intention we release into the world participates in the architecture of reality. When we ignore this, we feel powerless, victims of random chance. But when we awaken to it, we reclaim our role as co-creators of life, aligning ourselves with the universal flow. Understanding this truth requires humility. It demands that we admit that what we see is not all there is. It reminds us that our judgments, based only on appearances, are fragile. Someone may appear poor, yet carry a wealth of spiritual strength unseen by society. Another may appear powerful, yet live enslaved by inner emptiness. The true measure of life is not in what is visible, but in the depth of what is hidden. Therefore, to walk wisely through existence is to cultivate a deep respect for the invisible. Every silence can be an answer. Every coincidence may be a sign. Every loss may hide a lesson. When we attune ourselves to these subtle messages, life ceases to be chaotic and becomes a dialogue with the universe. In conclusion, invisible forces shape reality in ways far greater than the eye can perceive. By honoring them, we align ourselves with the rhythm of creation, and by ignoring them, we risk drifting through life blind to its deeper truths. If you wish to journey further into these revelations, to awaken to the mysteries that lie beyond appearances, I invite you to stay with this path of wisdom. And before we move to the next topic, I encourage you, subscribe to this channel, join this community, and walk with us through the invisible corridors of the universe, where every hidden meaning is waiting to be unveiled. If we are to recognize that everything invisible carries meaning, then we must go deeper into the mystery of the unseen and examine how what is hidden not only influences, but also reveals the architecture of the universe. To enter this space is to realize that life itself is constantly speaking in a language beyond appearances. The air we breathe is invisible, yet it sustains our bodies with every moment. The silence between notes in a melody is invisible, yet it gives shape to music. The trust between two souls is invisible, yet it determines whether their relationship flourishes or collapses. This pattern repeats endlessly. The invisible is not absence, but presence in another form, and by learning to read it, we discover truths that logic and surface perception cannot reach. Human beings have always been haunted by the invisible. We cannot see the past, yet it clings to us through memory, shaping our choices and our identities. We cannot see the future, yet it calls to us with both fear and hope, shaping our decisions even before they are made. What we call destiny is not written in visible ink, but is etched invisibly through the convergence of choices, circumstances, and spiritual alignments that only unfold with time. When we ignore the invisible, we reduce life to accidents. When we honor it, we perceive a tapestry where even apparent chaos conceals a hidden order. The invisible also lives in the human heart. Our emotions, intangible and immeasurable, govern our lives with more power than any visible object. Nations rise and fall not only because of armies and weapons, but because of invisible forces like hope, despair, courage, and fear. Revolutions are born when people collectively feel a hunger for justice, a feeling no one can photograph, yet one that can alter the course of history. On the personal level, we make decisions not solely on visible evidence, but on invisible intuition. That inner voice, subtle and often ignored, is one of the clearest examples of how the unseen carries meaning. Intuition is not fantasy. It is the mind and soul reading signals, too subtle for rational awareness, drawing from currents of wisdom that flow beneath the surface. To understand the invisible is to understand symbolism. A dream, for example, is a bridge between the conscious and unconscious, full of images that are not literal but symbolic. A river in a dream may not be water at all, but a sign of emotional flow or spiritual passage. Symbols are the language of the invisible, And once we begin to pay attention, life itself becomes a dreamlike dialogue. A bird crossing your path may not be mere coincidence, but a reminder of freedom. A sudden delay may not be an obstacle, but a redirection towards something your eyes could not yet see. The invisible speaks constantly through symbols, synchronicities, and patterns that only the attentive heart can read. There is also the invisible moral law that governs life. Every action, though perhaps unseen, has consequences. When someone nurtures bitterness in secret, it corrodes their soul and eventually spills into their relationships. When someone cultivates kindness quietly, without recognition, it radiates outward in unseen ripples that can touch lives they never meet. This invisible law is often described as karma, but regardless of name, its reality is undeniable. What is sown in silence is reaped in time. The universe records everything, even if human eyes cannot. The meaning of the invisible here is not abstract but practical, for it shapes every outcome we encounter. Even science, often thought to deal only with the visible, leads us back into the mystery of invisibility. Consider light itself. Human eyes perceive only a small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. Beyond what we call visible light lies infrared, ultraviolet, gamma rays, and radio waves. All invisible, yet all profoundly real. This truth is humbling, for it proves that what we see is not the whole, but a tiny fragment of reality. Our senses are limited, and our instruments, though powerful, can never exhaust the infinite. If we admit this scientifically, why do we resist it spiritually? Just as there are invisible wavelengths of light, so there are invisible dimensions of meaning. To close ourselves to them is to deny the vastness of existence. The invisible is not only cosmic, but intimate. Think of memory. No one can hold a memory in their hands, but memories can heal or destroy. They can imprison us in guilt or liberate us through forgiveness. Think of imagination. It cannot be weighed, but without it there would be no art, no invention, no progress. Every masterpiece of music began as an inaudible inspiration. Every scientific discovery began as an invisible curiosity. Every transformation in a person's life began as an invisible decision, perhaps unspoken, deep in the heart. Thus, what is invisible is not peripheral, but central to everything we are and everything we will become. There is also the invisible presence of the sacred. Many traditions describe a divine presence that accompanies us even when unseen. Whether one calls it God, Spirit, Source, or the Eternal, it is not visible in the way a mountain or river is visible, yet it has guided lives, shaped civilizations, and comforted souls through millennia. For those who are sensitive, the invisible sacred presence can be felt in silence, in nature, in prayer, or in moments of overwhelming love. Skeptics may deny it, but the experience of billions across history suggests that this invisible presence is as real as any visible phenomenon. Its meaning is that life is not empty, but infused with guidance and companionship, even when solitude seems absolute. Invisible meaning also teaches us humility in the face of suffering. Often we cannot understand why a tragedy occurs, why a door closes, why a relationship ends. From the surface, it appears meaningless. Yet time reveals that the invisible carried a deeper lesson, a hidden path, or an unseen protection. Many people, looking back, recognize that their most painful losses opened the way to their greatest growth. What seemed senseless at the time was, in fact, meaningful in ways they could not initially perceive. This is why patience and trust are necessary virtues. They allow us to give the invisible time to reveal its message. If we are willing to open our hearts to invisible meaning, the world itself becomes transformed. A forest is no longer just trees, but a living expression of unseen harmony. The stars are no longer distant lights, but symbols of infinite possibility. Our daily encounters are no longer random, but filled with potential guidance. Every moment becomes sacred because every moment carries an unseen layer of truth. This shift is not an escape from reality, but an awakening to its depth. Of course, living with awareness of the invisible is not always easy. It requires us to slow down, to listen beyond noise, to trust beyond appearances. It demands discernment, for not every invisible thought or impulse is wise. Fear, too, is invisible, and it can distort perception. The challenge, then, is to cultivate inner clarity so that we can distinguish between the whispers of truth and the echoes of illusion. Meditation, prayer, reflection, and silence are tools that cleanse the lens of perception, allowing us to see the invisible more clearly. Ultimately, to acknowledge that everything invisible has meaning is to step into a life of greater wonder. It is to understand that nothing is wasted, not even silence, not even absence. It is to live with faith that the unseen threads weaving through our existence are guiding us toward growth, connection, and purpose. It is to realize that what truly matters, the love we give, the wisdom we cultivate, the faith we carry, cannot be measured or seen, yet it defines us more than anything else. And so, as you reflect on the invisible dimensions of your own life, remember that you are surrounded by meaning even when you cannot see it. Trust that the universe is speaking in silence, teaching through absence, guiding through coincidence, and holding you in ways your eyes cannot prove. If you wish to keep exploring these mysteries, if you want to awaken more deeply to the unseen forces that shape your destiny, I invite you once more. Subscribe to this channel, join this journey, and walk with us into the invisible, where the truest meanings of the universe await discovery. If we continue our journey into the mystery of the unseen, we begin to realize that the invisible is not only a hidden layer of reality, but also the very foundation upon which the visible rests. To grasp this truth, one must think of life as a house whose strength lies not in the walls or roof, which are visible, but in the foundation buried beneath the ground, unseen and often forgotten. Without that invisible support, the entire structure collapses. In the same way, the universe as we perceive it, trees, mountains, oceans, and even our bodies, is upheld by invisible dimensions that give form and stability to what we see. To awaken spiritually is to turn our attention to this foundation and to realize that it is alive with meaning, guidance, and power. One of the most profound invisible dimensions of life is consciousness itself. No microscope has ever captured a thought. No telescope has ever mapped the mind, and yet consciousness is the central axis of all experience. Every dream, every fear, every act of love originates in the invisible chamber of the mind. Scientists can observe neural patterns, but they cannot locate the soul of awareness. It is a mystery, and yet it is the most intimate reality we know. Consciousness demonstrates that invisibility does not equal non-existence. Rather, it reveals a deeper layer of reality. The fact that the invisible mind governs the entire visible world of human activity is itself a lesson that what cannot be seen may in fact be what truly matters. When we observe nature, we discover that the invisible operates everywhere. A seed, for instance, carries within it an invisible potential that no eye can fully perceive until it manifests. When you look at a small seed, you do not see the towering tree it will become, the shade it will give, the fruit it will bear, or the countless lives it will touch. All of that is invisible, hidden within, waiting for the right conditions to be revealed. This truth mirrors our own lives. Within each person exists an invisible seed of destiny, a hidden greatness, a purpose that is not visible at first, but emerges slowly through experiences, struggles, and revelations. If we dismiss the invisible, we deny ourselves the possibility of recognizing this inner seed. If we trust it, we allow the universe to unfold its hidden plan through us. The invisible also teaches us about connection. Think of the wind, invisible, yet it moves the oceans, shapes the land, carries seeds across continents, and refreshes every living being. In the same way, invisible currents connect human souls. Empathy, for example, is invisible, but it allows us to feel the joy or sorrow of another as if it were our own. Telepathic bonds between close family members or lovers are often reported. A mother feels her child's pain even across distance. A friend suddenly thinks of another just as that person calls. Whether explained through science or not, these invisible connections reveal that separation is an illusion and that the unseen threads of existence weave us into a single living tapestry. Invisible meaning can also be discovered in silence. In a world filled with noise, silence may seem like emptiness, but in truth, it is full of depth. The pauses between words carry as much meaning as the words themselves. In meditation, silence reveals truths the mind cannot reach through speech. In relationships, silence often communicates what words cannot: comfort, presence, understanding. To those attuned to it, silence is not the absence of meaning, but its deepest expression. Many spiritual masters insist that the invisible silence of the heart is where the divine speaks most clearly. Thus, when we embrace silence, we open ourselves to the infinite. Another invisible dimension is time. We see its effects: aging, growth, decay. But time itself is invisible. We cannot hold it, and yet it shapes every moment of existence. Philosophers and mystics argue that time is not only a physical measurement, but also a spiritual teacher. The passing of time reveals that all things are impermanent, that clinging leads to suffering, and that every moment is precious. Time's invisibility reminds us that the most powerful forces are those we cannot grasp, and its meaning lies in urging us to awaken before moments slip away. Each invisible second is an invitation to live with intention. Dreams are another domain of invisible meaning. Every night, as the body rests, the mind enters landscapes that are not visible to the waking eye. In these dreams, we encounter symbols, messages, and experiences that sometimes reveal hidden fears, sometimes bring healing, and sometimes even foretell the future. Across cultures, dreams have been seen as bridges to the divine, a dialogue between the human soul and the greater mysteries of existence. While modern society often dismisses dreams as random, those who listen to their invisible language discover guidance, creativity, and profound insights. The dream world demonstrates once again that what cannot be seen by daylight can carry truths essential to our journey. The invisible also challenges us with paradox. For example, love grows stronger when it is invisible, when it does not seek display or recognition. A secret act of kindness, unseen by the world, often carries more weight than a visible one done for applause. In this way, the invisible purifies intention. It teaches us to value authenticity over appearance. Many spiritual traditions emphasize this truth. True prayer is done in secret. True generosity expects no witness, and true transformation happens in the heart before it ever manifests outwardly. The invisible protects sincerity by stripping away the masks of performance. On a collective level, entire societies are shaped by invisible narratives. Myths, values, and collective memories, though intangible, define how people live and interact. Nations may fight over visible land, but the true battleground is often invisible. Ideas, beliefs, ideologies. History proves that invisible stories have the power to build civilizations or destroy them. To ignore the invisible in this sense is to misread history itself. The rise and fall of empires cannot be understood only by armies and resources, but must also include the invisible spirit, morale, and meaning carried within a people. Yet the invisible is not always benevolent. Just as unseen love heals, unseen hatred poisons. Invisible wounds, trauma, resentment, despair can cripple lives silently. Because they are not visible, they are often dismissed, but their impact is profound. Recognizing this teaches us compassion. We never know the invisible battles another person is fighting. To live wisely is to remember that every soul carries invisible burdens and invisible strengths. Respecting this truth opens the door to empathy, patience, and genuine connection. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the invisible is that it is the birthplace of transformation. Before a new life begins, it is invisible in the womb. Before a word is spoken, it is invisible in the mind. Before change appears in our lives, it germinates invisibly in the soil of experience, often unnoticed until it blossoms. For this reason, trusting the invisible is an act of faith. It is believing that even when nothing seems to move, something is happening beneath the surface. It is holding hope when the visible offers no evidence, trusting that the unseen is already shaping what will be revealed. This is not wishful thinking, but alignment with the natural rhythm of existence, which always moves from invisible to visible, from hidden to manifest. As we integrate this awareness, life becomes richer. We learn to interpret silence, to respect hidden struggles, to trust unseen processes, to listen for subtle guidance. We begin to realize that coincidences may be synchronicities, that obstacles may be redirections, that endings may be beginnings in disguise. To live in such a way is to walk in harmony with the invisible wisdom of the universe. It is to recognize that nothing is meaningless, that even absence, even loss, even mystery carries its own hidden message, and so the invisible invites us to humility, trust, and wonder. It teaches us that the universe is not a lifeless machine, but a living mystery. It challenges us to see not only with the eyes of the body, but with the eyes of the soul. It encourages us to trust that even when we do not understand, meaning exists, waiting for its time to be revealed. In this way, the invisible is not an obstacle, but a guide, leading us deeper into truth. If you feel the stirring of this truth within you, if you sense that your life too is filled with invisible meanings waiting to be unveiled, then continue walking this path with us. These reflections are not just words, but keys to a greater understanding of yourself and the universe. And as we continue to explore these mysteries together, I invite you once again, subscribe to this channel, become part of this journey, and join a community dedicated to unveiling the hidden wisdom that sustains all existence. The invisible has always spoken. Now is the time to listen. To deepen our reflection on the invisible, we must confront one of the most profound aspects of human experience, the fact that what truly directs the course of our lives is rarely what can be seen. We may think that jobs, money, possessions, or appearances hold the key to fulfillment, yet beneath all these visible forms lies a deeper truth. Invisible meaning shapes visible destiny. The invisible works silently, often without recognition, and yet it governs the rhythm of existence. To deny this is to misread life, while to embrace it is to step into alignment with the wisdom of the universe. Consider the invisible power of belief. Entire civilizations have been built upon shared faith, myth, or vision. The pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Asia, the cathedrals of Europe, these monumental structures were born not simply from stone and labor, but from an invisible conviction that life was infused with higher meaning. Belief cannot be weighed or measured, yet it inspires human beings to sacrifice, to endure, and to create wonders that defy imagination. Even today, invisible beliefs shape society, whether in politics, economics, or culture. The structures we see are but manifestations of ideas, dreams, and convictions that began invisibly within the human mind. Faith, hope, and trust also belong to this unseen realm. A person may walk into uncertainty not because evidence guarantees success, but because of an invisible assurance in the heart. Parents raise children without any guarantee of the future, sustained by invisible love. Innovators pursue ideas others call impossible, driven by invisible faith in possibility. This faith does not always lead to visible reward, but its invisible presence sustains life itself. It proves that meaning is not confined to what we can verify, but often dwells in what we cannot yet see. The invisible also reveals itself in the human search for purpose. Ask anyone what they most deeply desire, and beneath the surface of material goals lies a longing for meaning. We want to know why we are here, what our existence contributes, and whether our lives matter. This hunger is not physical. It cannot be satisfied with food, wealth, or status. It is invisible, arising from the depths of the soul, and yet it is this invisible longing that drives people to create art, to seek truth, to sacrifice for justice, and to reach for the divine. The pursuit of purpose is itself evidence that invisible meaning underlies the visible world. In relationships too, the invisible is decisive. Friendship cannot be touched, yet it sustains us. Love cannot be seen, yet it transforms us. Trust is invisible, but without it, no connection can last. A family is not merely a collection of people living under the same roof, but a network of invisible bonds, loyalty, care, sacrifice, that give it life. When these invisible bonds are broken, the visible family disintegrates, even if all its members remain physically present. Thus, the invisible is not secondary but essential. Even in suffering, the invisible carries meaning. Pain itself is invisible. We see its outward expression, but the inner experience cannot be fully shared. Yet within pain often lies transformation. Invisible strength emerges in hardship. Invisible resilience grows in struggle. Invisible wisdom deepens through loss. Many of the most profound lessons in life are invisible gifts hidden inside suffering. The visible event may appear destructive, but the invisible meaning it carries can be life-giving. Only by looking beyond appearances can we uncover this hidden treasure. The invisible is also the birthplace of creativity. An artist looks at a blank canvas, and in the invisible realm of imagination sees an entire world. A composer hears music within silence before a single note is played. A writer senses characters and stories before any words appear on a page. Creativity is the translation of invisible visions into visible form, and this process reminds us that everything visible was once invisible. Our houses, cities, languages, and tools all began as unseen thoughts. Creativity is a dialogue with the invisible, proving again that what cannot be seen shapes everything we can see. There is a spiritual law that reflects this. We reap what we sow, not only in actions, but also in intentions. The invisible intention behind a deed carries as much weight as the deed itself. A gift given with pride carries less blessing than one given in secret love. A word spoken with malice wounds more deeply than its sound suggests. Invisible motives shape the visible outcome of every action. This is why spiritual traditions emphasize purity of heart, for the invisible intention defines the true meaning of the visible act. Invisible meaning is also found in nature's cycles. The roots of a tree, hidden underground, are what give strength to its trunk and branches. The currents beneath the ocean's surface shape the movement of entire seas. The invisible rotation of the earth produces the visible alternation of night and day. The invisible pull of the moon creates the tides. The universe is filled with invisible rhythms that govern visible phenomena. To ignore them is to misunderstand nature itself. To respect them is to live in harmony with the cosmos. There is another dimension to the invisible, the inner voice, or conscience. Every person, regardless of culture or religion, carries within themselves a sense of right and wrong. It cannot be proven physically, yet it persists. When we betray it, we feel invisible guilt. When we honor it, we feel invisible peace. This conscience is a compass pointing us toward harmony with truth. Though unseen, it may be the most powerful force guiding human behavior, capable of restraining cruelty and inspiring sacrifice. To listen to it is to acknowledge that invisible meaning is woven into the very fabric of our being. The invisible also appears in the form of synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem to defy logic. A chance meeting that changes the course of your life, a book that arrives just when you need its wisdom, a word overheard that answers a silent question. Rational minds dismiss these as random, but those who live attentively perceive them as signs of an invisible order. These moments whisper that life is not chaotic, but guided, that the unseen is orchestrating events with precision beyond comprehension. Such experiences awaken awe and remind us that invisible meaning constantly surrounds us, if only we are willing to notice. At the deepest level, the invisible reveals the presence of the eternal. The body is visible, but the soul is invisible. The body decays, but the soul endures. This conviction, carried by nearly every spiritual tradition, gives meaning to existence. If we believed only in the visible, life would end in despair, for all visible forms pass away. But the invisible soul carries hope, promising that our essence is not bound by time or death. To recognize this is to live with reverence, to treat every being as sacred, and to walk with humility before the mystery of life. The invisible also teaches us to see differently. When we look at others, we often judge by appearances, the clothes they wear, the positions they hold, the roles they play. Yet the true person is invisible. Their thoughts, their values, their character, their soul. A humble appearance may conceal greatness, while a glamorous appearance may conceal emptiness. To see with the eyes of wisdom is to look beyond the visible and honor the invisible within each human being. This perspective dissolves prejudice and opens the way to compassion. Invisible meaning is not abstract philosophy, it is practical guidance. To recognize it is to live differently. It changes how we speak, for we know words carry invisible energy. It changes how we think, for thoughts create invisible patterns that shape our lives. It changes how we act, for intentions matter as much as actions. It changes how we relate, for we understand that unseen bonds hold more weight than outward appearances. It changes how we suffer, for we realize that hidden within pain may be growth. To live with this awareness is to live more consciously, more wisely, more fully. When we accept that everything invisible has meaning, life ceases to be shallow and becomes profound. We learn to trust when we cannot see, to hope when evidence is absent, to persevere when results are delayed. We learn that every silence carries a message, every absence may conceal presence, and every loss may hide a gift. The invisible is not a void, but a fullness waiting to be discovered. It is not meaningless, but saturated with meaning that reveals itself over time. And so, the invitation is clear: awaken to the invisible. Do not dismiss the whispers of your heart, the symbols in your dreams, the coincidences in your days. Do not reduce life to the material and visible, for that is only a fraction of reality. Open your soul to the unseen, and you will find guidance, connection, and transformation beyond what appearances can offer. Trust that the universe is alive with hidden meaning, and that every invisible force, though unseen, is conspiring to shape your journey with purpose. As you reflect on these truths, remember that this path is not meant to be walked alone. We are all students of the invisible, seekers of hidden wisdom, companions in a journey that transcends appearances. If you wish to continue exploring these mysteries, if you long to awaken more deeply to the hidden meanings of your life, I encourage you once more, subscribe to this channel, walk with this community, and together, let us enter the invisible realm where the universe unveils its most sacred truths. To arrive at the final stage of our exploration of the invisible is to recognize that what lies beneath the surface of reality is not only meaningful, but essential. Life itself is not a matter of appearances, but of hidden truths that only the attentive heart can grasp. The more deeply we study the invisible, the more we realize that it is the ground of all existence, the silent field in which everything visible is born, sustained, and eventually dissolved. What we call matter, what we call identity, what we call events, are all expressions of forces that cannot be seen. The invisible is the language of the universe, and to understand it is to unlock wisdom that has guided humanity since the dawn of consciousness. The invisible teaches us that reality is layered. On the outer layer, we see faces, objects, and circumstances. Deeper beneath lie emotions, thoughts, and energies. Beneath these again lies spirit, the most invisible, yet the most powerful. If one lives only on the surface, life appears random, cruel, and shallow. But when one trains the soul to sense the deeper layers, life reveals coherence, purpose, and grace. The invisible is the thread that unites opposites, the silent harmony beneath the noise of existence. Every paradox begins to make sense when we look beyond appearances. Suffering becomes a teacher, silence becomes communication, absence becomes presence, and death becomes transformation. When we consider death itself, we are confronted with the ultimate invisible mystery. The body dies, the form decays, but the question arises, what of the essence? Across cultures, people have testified to the conviction that something survives. Call it soul, spirit, or consciousness. It is invisible, but it resists annihilation. The invisible continuity of existence explains why humans instinctively resist the idea of final extinction. We sense, deep within, that life is more than flesh, that being extends beyond the body. If all meaning were confined to the visible, then life would be absurd, for all visible things perish. But the invisible gives continuity, offering hope that our journey does not end with what the eyes can see. The invisible also gives depth to love. To love someone is to perceive more than what is visible. Beauty fades, bodies age, circumstances change, yet true love endures because it is rooted in invisible loyalty, invisible commitment, invisible union of souls. This truth explains why the deepest bonds often defy explanation. They are not based solely on visible qualities, but on an invisible recognition that transcends time and logic. Families are sustained by invisible devotion, friendships endure through invisible loyalty, and humanity survives because of invisible compassion. Without these unseen forces, society would collapse, for no amount of visible structure could hold it together. Another way the invisible manifests is through memory and legacy. A person may die, and their body vanishes from sight, but their influence continues invisibly. Words they spoke, kindness they gave, lessons they embodied ripple through time, shaping lives long after they are gone. The invisible legacy of character outlives any monument. Indeed, the greatest treasures humanity preserves are not visible possessions, but invisible values: freedom, justice, dignity, wisdom. These cannot be touched, but they shape entire epochs. The meaning of the invisible here is that what truly endures is not the material, but the spiritual. The invisible also governs healing. A wound in the body is visible, but the will to heal, the courage to persevere, the hope that sustains recovery, these are invisible. Many illnesses are aggravated or relieved by invisible states of mind. Stress, fear, and despair can weaken the body, while faith, peace, and joy can strengthen it. This does not mean that medical treatment is unnecessary, but it proves that healing is not only physical, but spiritual. Invisible forces of hope, prayer, and intention often make the difference between decline and recovery. Science is slowly recognizing this, confirming what ancient wisdom always taught: the mind and spirit are powerful healers. The invisible also shapes destiny through choice. At every moment, we make decisions that are invisible to others. No one sees the inner struggle before a word is spoken, the silent deliberation before an action is taken. Yet these invisible choices determine the visible path of our lives. A single decision, invisible to the world, may alter generations. This is why self-awareness is so important. To master life is to master the invisible realm of choice, intention, and thought, for there the future is forged. When we ignore this, we become prisoners of circumstances. When we embrace it, we become co-creators with the universe. Invisible meaning also shines through in art and symbolism. A painting is not merely pigment on canvas, but a window into invisible vision. A poem is not merely words, but an invitation into invisible emotion. Music is not merely sound, but resonance with invisible harmony. The arts remind us that life cannot be reduced to what is measurable. They awaken in us the sense that invisible meaning is the deepest reality of all. When we stand before a great work of art and feel awe, it is not the visible form alone that moves us, but the invisible presence carried through it. Invisible meaning is also revealed in nature's mysteries. The migration of birds, the cycles of the seasons, the silent growth of forests, all suggest an invisible intelligence guiding life. Even the stars, which seem silent and distant, are part of invisible cosmic rhythms that influence tides, climates, and perhaps even human consciousness. To dismiss this as chance is to miss the wonder of existence. To recognize it is to bow in reverence before a wisdom greater than our comprehension. The invisible is the handwriting of the divine across the canvas of the cosmos. At the heart of all this lies the practice of trust. Trust itself is invisible, yet without it life collapses. A child trusts a parent, a sailor trusts the stars, a seeker trusts the inner voice. Trust does not deny uncertainty, but embraces the invisible order behind it. To trust is to live as though the unseen is meaningful, as though the silence speaks, as though the darkness conceals light. This is the essence of faith, not blind belief, but courageous trust in invisible meaning. It is this trust that allows us to endure suffering, to wait for growth, to persevere in hope. The invisible also calls us to responsibility. Since invisible choices shape visible reality, we must guard our inner world with care. Thoughts of bitterness or envy may be unseen, but they erode the soul and poison relationships. Thoughts of compassion and gratitude may be unseen, but they radiate peace into the world. Every invisible thought is a seed. Some seeds grow into weeds, others into fruit. To live wisely is to plant intentionally in the invisible garden of the mind, knowing that one day the visible harvest will come. The invisible can also be terrifying, for we fear what we cannot see. Darkness has always symbolized the unknown, and humans instinctively fear the invisible threats it may conceal. Yet when we face the invisible with courage, it becomes less threatening and more revealing. Shadows dissolve when light enters. Fear diminishes when we trust that the invisible, though mysterious, is not meaningless but filled with lessons and hidden guidance. To embrace the invisible is to transform fear into faith. In the end, the invisible is where life begins, where it is sustained, and where it returns. We came from the unseen. We live supported by the unseen, and we return to the unseen. Breath itself is invisible, yet it is life. The heartbeat is invisible until measured, yet it sustains us. Consciousness is invisible, yet it defines us. Love is invisible, yet it redeems us. Death leads into the invisible, yet it opens into mystery. Everything essential is invisible. This is the greatest paradox of existence. What matters most cannot be seen, yet it is more real than all that is visible. To live with this awareness is to live awake. It is to treat others with respect, knowing they carry invisible stories. It is to cherish silence, knowing it is full of meaning. It is to trust the future, knowing it is shaped in the invisible present. It is to embrace mystery, knowing that understanding does not depend on seeing. It is to live with reverence, humility, and awe before the great invisible wisdom of the universe. And so, as we bring this reflection to a close, the message is simple but profound. Everything invisible has meaning. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is empty. Nothing is random. The universe is alive with unseen forces of guidance, connection, and transformation. To dismiss them is to live on the surface. To embrace them is to dive into the depth of existence. May you open your heart to the invisible, listen to its whispers, trust its guidance, and find in it the meaning that your soul has always sought. And as you continue on this path, I invite you once more to join this journey, to share in these revelations and to walk together with those who seek truth beyond appearances. Subscribe to this channel, become part of this community, and together we will keep unveiling the hidden wisdom that sustains life and awakens the soul.